So what happens when a comedian's joke literally gets their show pulled off the air? That's what we're digging into today. We're going to break down how one single monologue from Jimmy Kimmel just exploded into this huge firestorm, a debate about free speech, corporate power, and that really blurry line between a business decision and actual censorship.
All right, so let's get right into it. Picture this. You turn on your TV, expecting to see one of the biggest hosts in late night, and there's nothing. Just gone. For about a week, that was the reality for a huge chunk of America. And the story of how this happened? Well, it's a wild one, involving a comedian, a president, and some of the most powerful media companies out there.
So where did this all begin? It really all started with just one monologue. On September 15th, Jimmy Kimmel was talking about the tragic murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, and a comment he made in that moment is what set off this massive chain reaction.
So that's the comment right there. By linking the alleged killer to the MAGA movement, Kimmel lit the fuse. I mean, the reaction from conservatives and different media figures was instantaneous. And the consequences? They came down, and they came down fast.
And when I say fast, I mean fast. Just look at this timeline. In the span of just 3 days, you've got a major station owner yanking the show, ABC itself suspending production, and then, to top it all off, the President of the United States actually chimes in to praise the whole thing. It was a whirlwind.
Okay, so who exactly pulled the plug here? You might think it was just ABC's parent company, Disney, but it's a little more complicated than that. Two of the biggest local station owners in the entire country, Nexstar and Sinclair, they decided to make their own call. They just stopped airing the show on all their ABC affiliate stations. We're talking a massive blackout in markets all the way from DC to St. Louis.
And this is where the story goes from a business dispute to something, well, a lot bigger. Suddenly, it wasn't just about a TV show anymore. The real question became, was the U.S. government actually trying to influence what you and I get to see on TV?
Right in the middle of all this is the FCC. That's the agency that holds the keys to every station's broadcast license. And the tone from its chairman, Brendan Carr, it had changed. And I mean dramatically. Go back to 2022, and he's talking about how political satire is this super important form of free speech. But fast forward to 2025, and his message sounds a whole lot more like a warning. You know, we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
Yeah, that whole easy way or the hard way thing, a lot of people heard that as a direct threat. We're talking about a threat to the broadcast licenses of any station that dared to carry Kimmel's show. Even conservative Senator Ted Cruz jumped in, saying it sounded like something straight out of a mob movie. You know, the whole nice bar you have here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it routine.
And that threat felt, well, it felt very real. Especially because the president himself had just recently thrown out the idea of revoking broadcast licenses for any network that gave him negative coverage. And guess who he said would be the guy to do it? You guessed it, Brendan Carr.
But here's where the story takes a really interesting turn. As all this pressure from the government started to build, something totally unexpected happened. This looming threat of censorship, it ended up creating some of the strangest bedfellows you could imagine in today's politics. Take Senator Ted Cruz. I mean, this is a guy who is constantly the butt of Jimmy Kimmel's jokes, and yet he was one of the very first people to speak out in defense of Kimmel. His argument was simple. Look, even if you can't stand what the guy says, letting the government silence him opens a door that eventually is going to be used against conservatives, too.
And it wasn't just him. Joe Rogan said basically the same thing. He got on his podcast and told his huge, mostly right-leaning audience that if you're cheering for this kind of government pressure, he said you're crazy because that exact same power will absolutely be turned on you one day.
The list of people who came to his defense, it was just stunning. When Kimmel finally came back on the air, he read off this list of names he was thanking, and it was a who's who of conservative media and politics. We're talking about people who disagree with him on pretty much everything, but they all stood up for his right to speak. For them, it wasn't about the joke anymore. It was about the principle of the thing.
So after a really intense week of debate, Disney decides to bring the show back. But Kimmel's first monologue back wasn't your typical late-night fare. It wasn't just about getting back to the jokes. It was a direct warning about the state of free speech in America.
But here's the thing. Even though Disney gave the green light, a full 20% of the country still couldn't watch his return. The show was still blacked out on a ton of local stations, including, and you can't make this up, the stations in Washington, D.C. itself.
Now, in that first monologue back, Kimmel was pretty emotional.
He made a point to clarify his original comment, saying he never, ever intended to make light of a horrible tragedy. But he was also really firm. He came right out and said that he did not agree with Disney's decision to suspend his show to begin with.
And he basically boiled this whole crazy week down to one single point. A government threatening to silence a comedian just because the president doesn't like him? That's not just wrong. In his words, it is anti-American.
And you know what? This story is still not over. Not by a long shot. Yeah, Kimmel's back on the main ABC network feed, but those big station groups, like Nexstar, they're saying they're still evaluating the show. That means its future is still totally up in the air in a big part of the country.
So all of this leaves us with this huge, critical, and totally unresolved question. Where do you draw the line between a private company making a business decision and actual government censorship? I mean, when these big companies act because they're feeling the heat from government officials, which one is it? And that's a question that goes way, way beyond just one late-night show.